So finally I took the photo of our own galaxy. So this has been like a lifelong dream for me. I've always wanted to capture the universe. All my life I've been fascinated by the universe, and pictures like this, videos and everything else just made everything for me. It made me feel a certain way about the universe. I just gravitated towards these pictures and these videos, and now I get the chance finally to take my own videos and pictures of the universe in places like ours in the southern hemisphere, where the great opportunity of having the most beautiful night sky that you can ever find anywhere else. The way we can do it is just point your smartphone towards the night sky, and it's that simple. That's what I thought as well when I first find out what astrophotography was, and we can finally use our smartphones, because these smartphones these days, man, this process was so crazy. It took us maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and see a lot of stars. But if you're trying to capture them by just using your phone, your pictures get corrupted by the light pollution that's surrounding it, right? So this was a very difficult moment. So we had to work towards that light pollution that is around, because I live in a city, right? I had a couple of problems that I have to solve. Number one, rain, cloudy nights. This is natural. You can't do anything about it. You just have to wait out the rain and the clouds so that you finally get clear skies that you want, unless of course you can just move somewhere else where you know there's no rain. The second problem, this was a much bigger problem, right? Of course, as mentioned, it, light pollution. When you try to take the picture, the light actually darkens the skies. There are apps actually that you can use so that you find dark areas. There's a chart online. It guesses the type of pollution that is in your area. I'll link everything down below. So the apps you can use to check for light pollution, it's light pollution map and dark sky map. There's also a Google picture and Google Maps that you can use for night sky situations. I don't know, I think it's called nightscape mode or something. When you go there, it will show you all the street lights that you have and find a dark spot. So there are 3 stories actually that I have that I'm going to share throughout this video. The first story is when I was 5 years old. My love for astronomy actually shined because I was obsessed with just sitting outside, look at the moon, look at the stars. So what I would do is actually every day I'll just go outside, draw the shape of the moon. You eventually see a pattern throughout the month. I think it's a 28-day phase, right? During like the next month, I'll always show my parents, yo, the moon today is going to be like this. They eventually thought that like I was such a genius, but I wasn't. I was observing. I was just obsessed with astronomy and looking at the stars and looking at the moon, and this is what kept me going. That the history I have with this subject made me want to do it even more and more. I could have waited and maybe done it later, but I'm doing it right now. And I needed to understand the physics of everything, the camera, so that I understand what's going on. The first cameras were just glass plates. Later, take a glass plate, you slate it with chemicals, and then you quickly put that glass plate behind like a lens or whatever, and then it pixelates that picture, so like you get those giant pictures, right? So this method of cameras was used to take the first picture of the moon ever. So even back then, when we get a new camera, the first thing that they thought about was like, okay, let me take a picture of the moon. This was by Henry Draper in 1941. The modern cameras that we have, so like we've moved on, but they're still applying the same type of concept that they used back then. If you understand the physics of how light and pixels work, in order for you to get that perfect picture, you have to be able to control the flow of photons, be able to get a detailed image of any object that you're trying to take. If you're using your phone, you only have to focus on exposure speed and ISO. These other two, they are manual, they are automated, so you don't have to worry about that, right? So trying to understand all this, as I've said before, led me to a deep rabbit hole of understanding camera sensors and pixels and how they work. Through that rabbit hole, I remembered something. There was a picture that I wanted to take. I think this was back in 2010, 2011, after years of documentaries and after years of hanging pictures on my wall of the sky, of the stars, of the moon and whatever. We had to like walk like a mile or whatever to collect the water, right? But when you get there, there's like a line. So what we had to do, because we were smart kids, we go at night. So going at night, you find there's no one, then we just get there, we play, we talk or whatever. We get there, we just collect water, but it's at night, maybe like 9 o'clock or whatever, since this is a dark era, where we're living in a dark era at the time. And then this bright purple light started hailing towards us. for me, because I think I was the only one that saw it out of like the 4 of us, it felt like it was this important thing that I wanted to know, right? This was the first time I saw a shooting star. I didn't want to use the shooting star, but a meteor. Like, this was the first time I saw it burning up inside like our atmosphere. I was so fascinated about this because when you're a kid, you're told that shooting stars is just a star moving to the other side, but I wanted to understand this physics. So finally, I'm taking these beautiful images of the night sky, controlling the exposure speed, but I noticed something and they're not as sharp as I want them to. I'm like focusing, I'm even laying down so that I take that beautiful picture and I don't move, but they still didn't feel right. They didn't represent what I was seeing, and I noticed I did some wrong. I didn't switch the settings for your camera. They usually come in JPEG or PNG. I had to switch that format to become a raw file. These images that you see right now, they were compressed. So much lost information, right? So I had to finally download an external app because apparently someone owns a patent for raw files. Since I'm using Android, I downloaded an open camera app. That while you're using this app, it allows you to manually control the exposure speed. Phones, sometimes they don't allow you to be able to manually switch them, so you have to get an external app. Most phones now, they do allow you to switch around the exposure speed and ISO, but if it doesn't, you can also download this app, open camera for Android. So finally I have everything: beautiful night sky, camera that I need, the understanding of what happens when you're taking a photo and where to be if you want to take the photo of our galaxy. And this takes me back to the final story that I have. This is like way back. This is my second year at uni. It's the first time I get to go to an astronomy class. I don't know if you like the universe and stars, like astronomy is like the best class. This is the class that you don't want to miss. These dope things happening, like they teach you everything, right? But the first assignment that I got was to observe the moon. So I observed the moon for an entire month, take the picture of the moon, and like just show what happens the entire month and what happens to the moon and everything. So this is my first assignment, and this took me back to the first story that I said of me observing the moon by myself when I was 5 or 4 years old, trying to understand the universe. This just made me think about how like full circle life is, like how full circle life can be. And finally, here are the photos that I took of the universe. I don't know if you can see this. I don't know if you can see this, but I will clearly show it. This is the picture of my night sky, and we're going to keep taking them and gather them more so that the picture of the galaxy actually shows when we finally stack them. When we finally stack these hundreds and hundreds of pictures, we're going to show you the picture of our galaxy.